Hey gang, welcome to Grace's Book Place. I'm Grace and this is my book place. Today I'm going to be doing the Booktube Newbie Tag because I just feel like that's the most basic thing to do when you start a booktube. So we'll just jump straight into the questions and you can learn a little bit more about me and the potential for this channel, I guess. Question 1. Why did you start this channel? I started this channel because, I generally just love books, but I've been doing Bookstagram for a little while under the same name, Grace's Book Place, and I'm reading a lot more than I have done for a few years, which is fantastic because during studying like university and stuff like that, like from A level basically to finishing university, reading sort of dropped off because I did I think it does generally for people, but I did a literature degree, so I was doing a lot of necessary reading for studying, and so reading for fun sort of became less of a priority because I was doing so much mandatory reading. So basically like when lockdown happened and stuff, and it's really the only it's like a sort of silver lining that I had time to read again and get back into that, and I started a podcast with a friend called Galleyproof, and I started Bookstagram and stuff like that, so I've been reading a lot more, which is fantastic, but I've been trying to keep up with written reviews for all of the books that I'm reading, and it's a little bit of a struggle, and I've been wanting to do a booktube for ages because I love, I'm always on YouTube. YouTube is my main place to go for content and stuff like that, so I've been wanting to do this for ages, and I just think it, for me personally, might actually be a better way for me to talk about the books that I love and discuss them and not be limited by the amount of characters you can use on I don't really use Twitter, but that or Instagram, and having to go into the comments and trying to word it perfectly because only so much can fit under the picture. So this way I can sort of spread that across, and people can come here if they're interested in hearing me talk properly about what I think about a book after I've read it. So that's largely the reason for that. Question 2. What are some fun and unique things you can bring to Booktube? The go-to answer I've seen on other people's tags for this is sort of me, there is something I think that even though there's a lot of people doing this, it can be really great to get an idea about a book, to have multiple sources and multiple places to go for different opinions and stuff. So I just think it, we're all unique, which is true, but it's a bit pretentious. But my way of reviewing things might be slightly different to someone else's, and it might suit different viewers or whatever. So I think that I can bring me to Booktube and all of that stuff. And who knows, potentially down the line, call new ideas and readathons and all of that stuff. So, I think it's always a good thing to have more people in the community and with different opinions on stuff and different things that they read and things like that. So I guess that answers that question. Question 3. What are you most excited for about this new channel? I think the thing that I personally am most excited for, aside from reading more, because I feel like I am reading more already and I read anyway, regardless, but I think there's an incentive in this, and you see everybody else reading something and it makes you want to join in, and I think that's the thing that I'm most excited about, is the community that it offers. My current situation is that around me, the main people that I have to talk about books are my mum, who's brilliant, and loves reading and books and stuff, and she's currently doing a Shakespeare PhD and all of this, so she's really into books, but she's she's not into all the same books that I am. She doesn't read fantasy and YA and all of that stuff, and so for that I would usually have my best friend Ali to talk to, but she's in America and I'm UK based, if you couldn't tell from the accent. I guess that doesn't really mean anything because you can have an accent and be somewhere else, but my best friend Ali, she lives in America and I do not, so it's hard to find time to converse like super regularly about books, which is why we started the podcast, but that's had to be on hold because she moved state and I was doing a master's. And the only other person is my husband, who's fantastic, and he's actually just finished training to be an English teacher, so he's reading a lot of stuff and he loves literature, but he doesn't, his love for reading doesn't manifest the exact same way that mine does. So this is a real great opportunity for me to find other like-minded readers and people who, it doesn't matter if we don't read the same thing or whatever, but it's just really cool to be in a community, hopefully, of people who have big collections of books and love to read all different kinds of genres like I do, who I can have real conversations about these sorts of things and like gush about all my favourite books that no one around me has read. So that's probably the thing that I'm most excited for, is to like make friends and connections and have a little gang of readers. Question 4. Why do you love reading? I think the classic sort of story for most readers, or most readers who read in the way that I think Booktube and Bookstagram do and stuff like that, is that when you're younger, it's just a massive escape. It was for me, I think. It's just like, it started when I was young and I've just always read, and I think that reading is like a wonderful escape, but it's also like as you grow up with it and mature with your reading, I think that for me, like, one of the things I love most is that it's such a vehicle for empathy, I guess. It's a bit deep, but like I think that reading as much as I do, and even if you're just reading, I say just, but even if you're reading stuff that people don't rate as much, you know, like romances and horrors and like YA stuff, like regardless, all of those things are you taking time to look at people in a certain situation, and even if it's fun and the main thing you're getting out of it is just that it's fun or it's funny or it's spooky or like whatever the reason is, I think that it's a real way to sort of widen your way of thinking and to try and be more empathetic to different experiences. Then again, in order to fulfill that properly, you should probably be trying to read as diversely as possible. So it's a little bit on the reader, but I think that it's one of the main things I love about reading. I just love looking, even if characters aren't real, they're based off of real experiences. Like authors try to write from things that they know. So I just, obviously within reason, but I just think that it's reading is just such a great way to look at the human experience, no matter what form that takes. So that's one of the main reasons why I love it. Question 5. What book or series got you into reading? So there's a later question that will let me expand a bit more on, I've always read since I can remember, and I've been told about books that I've read since before I can remember. But I guess the marker for when I became like really into reading, like the first time I can remember sitting in my room for a full week and not leaving it because I would not stop reading, is Twilight. I feel like people who read Twilight when it first came out or around that time who were young either fall into two camps. They either still love it and adore it and think it's great, or they are nostalgic about it and love it in that sort of ironic, I'm aware it's not the best thing ever and it's got a lot of problems, but it was fun at the time. And I'm this one. So there's a part of me that's a little bit like, oh no, when I admit that Twilight is probably the thing that made me go, yeah, I love reading and I'm never gonna stop. But I mean, I'm nostalgic about it. I still went out and got Midnight Sun and read it and had 14-year-old me was living. So there's that. So Twilight, I think, would be, because I remember convincing my mum to buy me all 4 Twilight books because I think I was like 12 and like Breaking Dawn came out, and the movie was already out. So by the time I read it, the first movie was already out, and there was like a big book release for either they re-released stuff because the movie was out, or there was a big book release for the final book for Breaking Dawn, and I convinced her to buy all 4 of them at once. And it was in summer, so I wasn't in school, and I just shut myself up in my bedroom for an entire week and finished the entire series in 1 week. Which I think is probably where my love of series comes from too, because I'm a big fantasy reader and I like series. So yeah, Twilight gets credit for that one, or for the development of my love of books to what it is now. So yeah. Question 6. What questions would you ask your favourite booktubers? I mean, I'd love to have proper conversations and hang out with so many. I'm a big fan of the Roomies Digest. I love Christine and Monique. And I really love Daniel Green, what a legend. Really love Kayla from Books and Lala. So I'd love to sit down and talk to all of those people, and more. I'm just blanking as I'm sat here. I think though that my main questions at the moment at this stage of just starting a booktube would be about editing and filming techniques, because I don't know what I'm doing. It's going okay, but I think that I would very much like to pick their brains about like how to do all of that stuff. So maybe a boring question, but that's sort of what I would really love. I'd love to learn from them about how they did this at this stage, and sort of what their process for filming and editing is, and any tips that they may have to make that a bit easier, as I am completely a beginner. So that those would probably be my initial questions at this point, though I'm sure there'd be plenty of other questions that are all book related further down the line. Question 7. What challenges do you think starting a booktube channel will be the hardest to overcome? Well, piggybacking off what I've just said, I think learning to do all the editing is going to be hard for me. I'm not a very patient person, trying to improve upon that, but learning all of that finicky stuff and is a bit daunting to me. So I think that's the largest challenge at the minute, but I think that there's also all the other common challenges with doing this for the first time. It's putting your face and your voice and your thoughts out into the internet, which is a scary place. So it's doing all of that stuff. I think those things will be challenging. And also, as much as I love the idea of this, I mean, I'm doing it. I love this. I'm really excited to be doing it, and I will be continuing. And like I said earlier, like it will help me read more and all that stuff. But then there's the other side of things, as we all know, that we get into reading slumps and life happens, and it's like the challenge of trying to regularly upload and stay on top of that and keep reading even when you feel like you don't need to. Like, you should never force yourself to read, obviously, and I don't think I ever will, but it's just like a slight added pressure, which can help you when you're in the mood to read more, which is fantastic, but can also potentially, if you're not careful with it, add to the guilt of not reading as much as you think you should. So that's a challenge, but I think that's more of a personal approach to it, and how you try and manage yourself and your expectations when you're starting something like this. And I know that I don't want to force any reading or do anything like that, so it should be fine. But I think that for some people that can be a struggle. Question 8, I think. When did you start reading? Okay, so this is the question that I mentioned earlier that would help me expand a bit, because obviously I do credit Twilight for like a moment in my life that I can pinpoint. That's when I knew I really loved this. But I was reading long before that, since before I can remember, like I said, so I've technically answered this, but to expand, like, I was reading, well, obviously Biff and Chip in school. That's for any British people. I don't know if they did that. I think it's very English, I could be wrong. But I remember reading Biff and Chip in school, and that was fun. I remember nothing else about it. And I read kids books like Snowy, it's about a horse who pulled a barge, and Hushwing, which is about a barn owl, and I read Room on the Broom and all the classics, and the only children's book that I own now, because I bought it as an adult because I saw it and got emotional, which is The Whale's Song. My mum read it to me. She read it to me when I was little, and I think it's where my love of whales began, because my favourite animal is whale, blue whale specifically. But yeah, so I read a lot as a kid, and I read Little Women when I was really young, and I was reading Garth Nix, his Horson. It was a trilogy then, but there's been more since, which I need to get to. But Lyriel, Sabriel, Lyriel and Porson, those were some of my faves. And the books of Pellinor by Alison Croggan, some of my favourite books, like high fantasy that got me into that when I was quite young. And like Tithe by Holly Black. So when I could start reading proper books, those sort of things, there was like a portion of my life where I was really into Clarice Bean. I don't fully all I remember is that she was a young girl who really liked books about a spy called Ruby. That's weird, but that's all I can remember from that. So I've always read. When growing up, we had like all of us, me and my two brothers, and my mum, we all had a bookshelf full of our own books in our rooms, and my mum would buy me like entire series to try and encourage me to read, and I would steal books off of my brother's shelf because he was reading fantasy that I wanted to read, but was probably a little bit too young, but I still would steal it and read it anyway. The house was just full of books and bookshelves, and I just don't think it was possible unless I was extremely rebellious, which didn't happen in that way. So it just wasn't possible for me to not grow up a reader or love reading. It was just predetermined for me. Question 9, I think. Where do you read? I mean, wherever I can, I guess. I will say I'm not, if I can choose, I'm not an outdoor reader. I know a lot of people love to like sit and bask in the sun and read, which I think sounds and seems wonderful. I wish I could do that, but I hate the sun. I hate the heat. I'm not good at sitting in hot weather. I'm not a sunbather. I'm a let's just get in the water or move around so I don't have to think about how warm I am, in a weird way. So I'm not an outdoor reader. I'm very much an indoor reader, which means comfy spots, like, which at the moment is mainly on the bed because our sofa is really not comfortable, but I'm usually reading on the sofa or on the bed or in bed. I would really love in the future to have what like a lot of readers I think aspire to have, which is a little home library with your big cushy like reading armchair type thing. That would be the dream. But yeah, I'm a cozy up with a blanket kind of reader. Though if I'm going somewhere on public transport or stuff like that, I always take a book. I usually will have a book with me, but that's mainly for like, and I will read if I'm not doing anything else, so I do take it out to read, but I also carry a lot of books around to take Instagram pictures, though I'm not very good at keeping on top of that either, but I still carry the books around and take pictures of them, so maybe you'll see them one day. But yeah, so that's where I read, I guess. I think this is question 10. What kind of books do you like to read? Okay. Historically, I've always been a fantasy reader, though I'm discovering recently, particularly through watching Daniel Green, that I don't really know the first thing about fantasy. Like, I haven't really scratched the surface of that. I feel like it's a cross between YA and fantasy that I have read so far, but I'm in my early 20s, so it makes sense that I would have read a lot of YA up to this point, because it's sort of aimed at me. But I'm branching out a bit more. I've read quite a lot of classics, and, well, I say that. I haven't read loads of them, so it's not like I'm an expert, but I've read like a few classics, and I've done quite a lot of Shakespeare stuff because of like studying and things. So I've done I'm into that. And more recently, I've been really wanting to read a lot more thriller and horror, which I've always been interested in like creepy stuff. So like a lot of fantasies, I think, that I've read at least, have like an element of that anyway. They deal a lot in like death, or like there's necromancy, or like creepy stuff, or, you know, villains can often be quite scary if they're written well. So I've always enjoyed that aspect of stuff. I've just never really sorted out properly in like a full, like that's what the book's about way, which I'm doing a bit more of now. I've got quite a few thrillers, at least. Dark academia, which I discovered I was a fan of after reading If We Were Villains, so that's a good time. But I've got quite a bit of that to read, to branch out. I also do enjoy contemporary quite a bit, but I feel like if it's not fantasy, sometimes I get in my head that I'm not gonna like it, but like I'm less drawn towards it, and I'm trying to push past that, which I think is working, because I'm picking up a lot more stuff that I don't think I would have when I was younger, because after Twilight and all of that stuff, after Twilight, I just read vampire books. I just found like the House of Glass series, is that what that was called? I don't even remember, but I read a lot of vampire books. What a time. Romance is harder for me, though I will say that, because I'm somebody who I love romance, I adore it, but I think I prefer it as a subplot, or a plot that happens alongside something else. I'm not always a fan of the romance is the only thing that's happening, but I can be. It depends on how it's written, and I'm open to suggestions for really good romances that are just romances, but they're good fun. So there's that. Last question. What does your book collection look like? This is my book collection. I will move. I'll probably try and take some better shots of it to put at the end here, but it's okay. So it's not as large as some people's collections who do this, but it's large enough that I'm running out of space where I live, because we don't have a spare room to put the classic Billy bookshelves, which is the dream, and like have a home library. And we do have a spare room, but it's my husband's office and where he films his videos, because he's got his own YouTube channel, and I'll link that below. This is like the living room, but also my office, so that's why you can see like a hint of DVDs, because the TV is that way. So we're running out of space. I recently had to like rearrange, because I was using the bottom shelf for some books I had read that we'd reviewed on the podcast, so I was keeping those separate. But all of these books, this is my TBR cart, so all of these books I have not read. So if you see any that you think I need to read, let me know, comment down below. But most of the books on this shelf I have read. There's just a couple that might be in sets or whatever that I haven't moved out of place yet, that I haven't read. So I rearranged stuff, and now the books that were on this are sort of up there, as you can see. So those are all the books that me and my friend Ali have reviewed on our podcast, which is available anywhere if you're interested in that. We're currently on hiatus, but you know, there's still like 12 episodes there if you're interested in thoughts I've had on any of those books. So yeah, that's like, there are other books, this isn't everything, but I've got like my current September TBR out on my desk over there, and a few books that I'm sort of halfway through, and quite like a lot of my non-fiction. I struggle a little bit with non-fiction. I love non-fiction objectively, and I want to read more of it, but because I'm so used to fiction, I think that it takes me a lot longer to have the motivation to pick up a non-fiction and to kind of get through it. So there's a lot of non-fiction that I've sort of started and gotten to various points in on my desk in a pile. So, and as more books come in, because this is the one bookshelf that we have, and I'm like having to find like space wherever anything will fit. So we're about to run out of space, so I'm gonna have to like improvise as new books come in, because I'm sure that they will, and as I read these I move them over and there's no space left. So like, you know, I've just finished reading Hunting Party, and that's down there in like a gap that I've found for some books that won't fit on the bookshelf. So that's my book collection. And if you're interested, I mean, it won't be that long, because as you can see, I don't have that many books. But if you're interested in like a full bookshelf tour thing, then let me know. The Booktube Newbie Tag, which is fun, and it's like a nice little introduction. Like I think it's I'm glad that it's a thing, because it makes the decision for, like, you know, sort of ripping off the band-aid, which is American, we say plaster, but it sort of works as that kind of video, like to just get yourself out there, to start it, to have some stuff prepared in a way. But hopefully I'll come out with a couple of videos soon, and, you know, thank you for watching and welcome, and I hope you like it here in my book place. See you next time. Bye.